Okay. Okay, well, sorry for that little technical issues, but hello everyone. I'm your eight letters curator, Cindy Wong, and I'm here for the launch of Mitolohiya PH, Kadiliman at Liwanag, or Liwanag at Kadiliman. These are the third and fourth book in the series, and my role for today is kind of similar to a VJ. Yeah, as we deep dive into the world of the authors and their stories. So I think that's one of the common denominators that we share here at Eight Letters. We're always kind of like aspiring to be something. Well, I'm an aspiring writer. I'm also an aspiring VJ. Well, anyway, I'm so excited to showcase some background about the writers, how they wrote the book, basically the process, the background on their characters, and where they got the inspiration. I always say it's not easy being a writer as it requires a lot of energy, emotional, physical, and mental. Well, you name it. Basically, we'll be featuring 11 writers out of the 20. But if you haven't got a copy yet, I recommend that you click on the link on our caption. You'll find it in the caption whether you're watching via the Eight Letters Facebook page, on our Eight Circles, or on our YouTube. And yeah, just click on the link and fill up the form. Okay, and you'll have the options to order either of the book, whether it's Kadiliman or Liwanag, or why not get all four of them. So there's also Takip Silim, Hating Gabi. These are the first two series. Anyway, looking at the overview of our program today, as I mentioned, we'll be featuring 11 writers. We'll talk to Tristan Dillon, Rolly Angelo Manuel, Emmanuel Canicosa, Meg Sanain, Erica Batas, Charis Sumalinog, Chloe Monsanto, Ara Marie Bayhon, Paulina Navarro, Lay, uh, May, and Kiera Virest. Okay, so there'll be quite a lot. Maybe in an hour we'll be basically covering a lot for today. And please do bear with me if ever there's some issues technically, because I just landed in Cebu basically a week ago. So yes, I'm officially in the Philippines. Okay, so once again, we're down to the second to the last day of our Eight Letters Literary Festival. And thank you so much. If you've been watching all of our videos, all our uploads, or all our lives, thank you so much for the support. Okay, so without further ado, we'll proceed with our first author. So this is Tristan Dillon. He's the author of The Break of Dawn. Okay, so just a minute. Okay, there you go.
Hi, I'm Tristan Pano. I started writing ever since I was a little kid. I still am, I think, in the inside, and I like to believe that that's one of the reasons I can get myself to write these stories. That I get to enjoy stories in the first place. The articulation of dreams, so to say. The ever so slightly morphing of reality that allows us to create new realities. It's a wonderfully special thing. I remember before the first story I ever wrote was on an airplane on my flight on the way to Boracay, I think. That was like the first flight I ever got on. I even wrote it on the free notebook they used to give passengers back then. My memory of this is a bit hazy though, because I was what? Whatever age I was when I was about grade 2 or 3. Ever since then, I'd buy notebooks from our school bookstore, extra notebooks that we didn't use in class, to just write random things like stories, poems, everything. I was 100% sure that whatever I wrote back then had more or less the technical quality of basically dog water. But I think I needed that. I needed to let the dog water out to make room for, hopefully, other things. Make room for stories to grow and flourish and not flounder. Ever since then, I had the interest and the internal desire to create new worlds. There was always something about creating something out of virtually nothing for me, of imagining things out of the ether, out of the blue. It's a it's a magical process, the creation of life in story, a process I am proud and glad and thankful to be a part of. Almost mystical, the gravitational pull of fictional worlds always had an effect on me. I think that kind of inspiration came from the stories I consumed when and was exposed to when I was a kid. Video games in particular had moved me profoundly. Kinda ironic. Games like Samurai Warriors and Kingdom Hearts, both games I wouldn't have a recollection, not even a ballpark answer on how many hours I poured into them. Though not having stories that blow minds or had the quality of classic masterpieces, some even had uh, stories that are basically scrutinized for their level of convolutedness and complexity and unnecessary tangents. Always carry the ever prominent and compelling narrative of good against evil, of light against dark, of honor against brutality. And these conflicts made me want to make some of my own stories too. Stories that harbored the same pain and catharsis, that brought forth the same passion from others, that was made from dreams and could then create new ones. One particular type of story, the myth, has played an integral role in explaining the unexplained. They're sort of like collective mind maps. Lightning rods to divinity that give us more assurance, security, and solace in our own humanity. My story in the anthology Kadiliman doesn't really try to explain anything new, but I'd like to think it brings a new perspective to well fleshed out mythological stories. A fun perspective. It's about a crumbling world where everything is in the process of getting purged and destroyed. And two rebel encantos, Tindig and Darilag, along with their group, scramble and try to save themselves from the world's end. They get an idea, a tip, an inkling that a magical fruit somewhere in the forest can make things better for them. They don't know how, they don't even know why, and they don't know what would happen. But survival comes first before answers. I named the story The Break of Dawn because it revolves around the concept of bringing forth a new day, of a new life. In the story itself, I bring together different concepts from different myths, legends, and stories from varying cultures and synthesize them in my story. The age old question, where did we come from? How did we come to be? Maybe the stories that tell the answers and explanations to these inquiries are all somehow related and connected. Who knows? But it'd be fun to think about. And that's what I did. Tindig and Rilag set out on their own journey, and you get to read about it in Kadiliman. So go get yourself a copy, I guess.
Okay, so you've heard it from Tristan. Go get yourself a copy of the latest book in the series, Liwanag and Kadiliman, from our Mitolohiya series. Okay, so the next one that we're going to hear from today, well, there'll be no video, but I'll be showing a collection of slides, and this is based, or this is actually from the words of Rolly Angelo Manuel, the author of Between the City and the Fort. You can find his story in on the book Liwanag. Okay, so as you can see, there's these contrasts of these mythological creatures, mythological stories here. So there's Kadiliman and then there's Liwanag. But I definitely recommend that you get both. And or why not get the entire series? Okay, so let me just add these slides right here. Okay, so I'll be reading words from the author. Okay, and then again, as you can see here on the screen, it's from Rolly Angelo Manuel. Let me present to you Between the City and the Fort. Hello, I'm Rolly Angelo Manuel. Currently, I study creative writing. Becoming an author, well, I can already, if I can already call myself that, it took a long realization. I only started writing last year. My first ever story, my peers hated it when they critiqued it. My coordinator seemed to have doubted me as well when I first applied in the creative writing program. But I always pride myself that I have extraordinary ideas, and the only skill I lack is beautiful and lyrical writing. So it was a huge shock to me to have been included in Fusion Fiction Summer Romance Top Stories to be published, to which I thank every judge and friends and family who supported it. I wrote the story in 4 hours before the end of the 14th of December, realizing the first one I made was so bad. Generally, I want to stick to the science fiction and fantasy genre. It is where my interest and imagination blooms and sprouts. Though it can be quite hard to think of a concept or story since it's not that popular here in the Philippines, but it will be in the future. Sometimes, well, most of the times actually, I just want to write about the simplicity of life. It is heartwarming to just narrate what you daily see and make it to a written memory. It makes the moment last forever. In the middle of 1900s, we had authors debating with each other whether literature should be as its own or should be socially significant. But in my stories, I want to mix both, that it can be read as its own while being an allegory to the current society. It's supposed to have both elements that can make the story powerful and lasting. So between the city and the fort, this was a struggle. But ultimately, I end up being highly influenced by Arrival 2016 by Denis Villeneuve. I figure fantasy stories nowadays must keep up with the advancement in scientific knowledge. So I made the beings aliens in this low fantasy story. I set it on Fort Bonifacio and the city opposite it, and between them is the Pasig River. The whole concept for this story was supposed to be about our actions towards climate change. However, it has also turned out to be an allegory about how our government handled the COVID-19 pandemic, the orb being the virus. As the title says, Between the City and the Fort, it is an allegory on how we are still hanging in the middle of modernization. On one end, the city. We want the we want to urbanize and be on level with other countries, but on the other, the fort, we just cannot let go of the past and certain habits and traditions. So in a way, we are stuck and cannot move forward to a more certain decision because we are constricted. We constrict ourselves and being always bound to repeat the same actions. Between the City also alludes to where mostly our poorer citizens live and how there is a stark contrast between their homes against the skyscraper buildings behind it, and how easy it can be for powerful people to eliminate or evict them from their homes and leave them nowhere to go. So it is a poignant contrast between the poor and the rich, and the powerful and the weak of our country. It is also where all the elements of nature meet, which appropriately will fit the three beings I chose for this story. I had many options, having based from Edgar Summers' book about lower myths in our country, but these choices were more rightful and easier to put into plot. The first being was a shokoi. I did not want it to be at that first. It's so overused, but then again, the other options were so difficult to weave into the story. The second being was a lumbong. I just found it cute to have those beings, the snake and the crab. Also, they are not much known, so I use these as an exposure. The third being, which was the easiest, was a Minokawa. That being was fantastic. It would have been a Bakunawa, but it is also quite overused now. Mikonawa is an awesome being who devours the sun, and it fits very well to the Master of the Sky. I wish to have explored these beings more, but generally basing on our government's erratic decisions and actions on wars, the story had to end that way. It was also meant to end that way as a sign of we never learned about how the future will always suffer. As I wrote this, I envisioned it being created into a short film. So I wish in the future it may well as be the case in the future. All right. So that's it from Between the City and the Fort. So I hope these slides plus voice over, are both working. This is the first time that we're doing this. So thank you for your words, Rolly Angelo Manuel. You can find his work on the Liwanag series, okay, on the Liwanag book, okay. So the next one that we'll have is going to be a video, thankfully. It is by Emmanuel Canicosa for his short story, The Thrill of the Hunt. So for his story, you can find it on Kadiliman. So we're doing it alternatively. So Liwanag, Kadiliman, basically. Okay. So again, just bear with me because I'm still very new with this navigation thingy. But let me also read some comments here. Okay, while we are figuring this out. Okay, where is that? Okay, so Emmanuel Canicosa. Okay, so let me just read just a few comments here on StreamYard. Okay, so Sander Bilio sends her greetings. Congratulations po sa lahat. And also Audie Monson. Yeah, congratulations everyone. Hi Cindy, you look good. Nice to see you. Thank you. Okay, and there's also Maria Luisa Saide. Okay, there you have it. Okay, so why not take it away? Oh, Emmanuel.
Hi, I'm Emmanuel Canicosa, one of the writers in the Mitolohiya book series. I currently work as a producer and writer for One Sports, the sports department of TV5, and I'm also taking up my master's in creative writing in UB Diliman. And for my fiction, I've written so far, the stories I've written so far have been published by Tomas, Malati Literary Folio, of DLSU, Ampersand by in UP Diliman, and Inquirer's Youngblood. Um, so far, the workshops that I've attended are UST National Writers Workshop last year, Ricky Lee's online screenwriting workshop a couple of years ago, and I hope to be able to join more publications, join more workshops, and just keep learning about writing and the craft of it. The story I wrote for the Eight Letters Mytholohiya book series is called The Thrill of the Hunt, and it will be published in the Kadiliman book. It's going to be my first published story in book form. All the other stories I've written have only been published online, so I'm really excited for this. It was inspired by the mobile game Mobile Legends and my time working in MPL Philippines, which is a professional Mobile Legends league. And I worked there for over a year, and my experience there working in esports for the first time informed my writing of this story. So when I saw that Eight Letters was looking for modern myths in their latest Mitolohiya collection, I thought that Mobile Legends and our local mythical creatures would be a perfect fit. And what's more modern than a game than Mobile Legends, which is very popular in the country right now. And I thought about mixing something that's ancient, which is our old, which is our mythical creatures, and something that's very new, which is Mobile Legends and its popularity in the country right now. So the story just grew from that idea, and that is where that is the story that you will find and you will be able to read in that book. So thank you to Eight Letters for considering my story and I hope you enjoy reading it. And I'm looking forward to getting the copy of the book. I'm looking forward to reading the other stories and the books in the series. So thank you.
Oops, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, so like these words from Emmanuel, it just reminded me of how we had the process in choosing the stories here in Mytholohiya PH. Of course, it wasn't easy. We received hundreds of entries, but the team was okay, and this is the tip to apply the team evolution. Okay, so how would you have or how would you apply the team evolution to these legends, to these mythological creatures, right? That we always hear the stories of Tikbalang, Kapre, Bakunawa, and all this. But how can you develop or how can you further improve the touch, the feel of these characters? We've read all these stories before, and we want to have something different, and that was the goal here for our series. So the theme was evolution. So I promise you guys, these stories, if you've heard them before, the stories on the book, it would be something different. Okay, so for the next one, we'll hear from Megisa Nine, the author of Ang Bulak sa Kagabion. Okay, so her work can be found on the Liwanag book. Okay, so take it away, Megisa Nine.
Hi, my adlaw. I am Merlin Bertuccio. I write under the pen name of Megasin9. I am a humanities and social science student. I have been writing since 2018. I started writing because of poetry. Yes, I write different styles of poetry. I compiled them, and then as of now, I got 4 collections of poems. They are all self-published online. And then I focus on writing short stories. Currently working on my short story collection entitled Rainbow Walk. So while I am studying, I actually join a lot of contests because in writing for contests, I get to experiment with my stories. I get to get out of my usual way of writing. I get to encounter different types of genres, improve my writing skills, and interact with other writers. That's what I love about writing for contests. And my story, Buwak sa Kagabion, sa Tagalog ay Bulaklak sa Gabi, is by far the strangest story I have ever written because the story itself is a mystery. It revolves around Katrina's dreams. Most of it are violent and cryptic. And then in her dreams, I summon 2 demons, si Tikbalang and si Kapre. So the 2 demons, actually, I always thought that the 2 demons are somehow related to each other. That's why I was inspired on writing a story about them. And then I also remembered a dream I had when I was young. I had a fever that moment. In that dream, I was being chased by someone. Someone was relentlessly chasing me. So I got inspired by the story because that dream was stuck in my head. And then I also saw a huge figure forming on top of a tree. I couldn't sleep that time, so I simply stared at the window curtain, and then I was wondering why is the tree getting bigger. So maybe that was the capre. I hope not. So yeah, that's what I love about the story actually because it is inspired by a lot of events in my life. And I could imagine it. I could imagine the story. I could imagine Katrina running away from her fears. I could imagine the setting of the story. That's what I love about it. And I was so happy that it got acknowledged and it was part of the top 20 in A letters contest. So yeah, I was contented with it. I was happy that I got the top 20. It was enough for me. I wasn't expecting that I would be part of the final winners. But then, 8 letters announced that all 20 would be published. I was surprised by it. I am forever grateful for this opportunity. Thank you, 8 letters. Thank you for helping young writers like me. It's a huge achievement for a first timer. So yeah, I am very happy to be part of the Liwanag book. The book cover is amazing. I hope it will be successful. All the stories are amazing. Um, I am forever grateful for this opportunity. Thank you, 8 letters. And to all the winners, congrats to us all. Thank you. Daghang salamat.
Thank you, Megisa 9. Once again, you can read her work on the book Liwanag. Okay, so her story is entitled Ang Bulak sa Kagabion. Okay, so that's very interesting. As I've mentioned, we've received hundreds of manuscripts, and choosing the best of the best for this collection hasn't been easy. Okay, so for our next writer, we'll be featuring Erica Batas. Okay, so she wrote the story Untold Endings, and you can find her story in Kadiliman. So this is Erica Batas. So again, I'll be showing slides. Okay, but these words are from the author herself, Erica Batas. Good day. My name is Erica Batas, and I'm from Antique, Visayas. I'm currently a first year college student taking BSED, majoring in English. As an introverted old soul, I've been spending the past decade of my life writing in the back of my class while dreaming of a hermit like life. I started writing in third grade 2011, and I'm currently working on a book that I'm planning to self publish soon. Aside from writing, I also paint, journal, collect secondhand books, and make YouTube videos in my free time. I like to explore different kinds of art forms, and right now, I'm trying to learn to make clay products or sculptures. Living in the oldest town here in Antique, where traditional beliefs and customs are still alive and practiced in our everyday lives, the different creatures from our legends and folklores are no stranger to me. Here, vehicles still beep their horns before passing through old trees, which are believed to be home to tamawos. Stories of aswangs and capres are still used to scare kids at night, and people still seek help from albularyos. I even have my own folk healer relatives that can reputedly communicate to the unseen forces. My mother's family is from the mountains, while my father is from a seaside town. And I so have quite a big collection of tales about different encounters with the creatures of our myths that we still like to talk about and discuss during a lazy afternoon or brownouts. Growing up with these stories played a huge role in my fascination with our country's mythology. I treasure every Philippine mythological inspired book that I could get my hands on, and when I saw the Phil Myth writing contest of 8 letters months ago, that's when I decided to try my luck. Untold endings. So it wasn't easy to choose a plot from all of the ideas I came up with upon hearing about the Rikon. I wanted to create a story that will showcase the creatures and myths I have shown or I have known since childhood. After a couple of days of brainstorming, I was able to write Untold Endings at 2 a.m. while multitasking on a research paper that was due the next day. Untold Endings features different creatures and inspirations from various myths, revolving about the stories and or legends that get altered as generations pass by. I choose this title to represent the real unknown endings that my characters experience, such as my take on what really happened to Aluncina when she left Tungkong Langit, or on what was Juan Tamad's fate. Here are some of the creatures' characters that you can find in my story. Tamara, the former Binukot protagonist who aged slowly due to being half Tamawo. It was the history of Binukotan of Panay that inspired me to create Tamara's character. In the old times, the Binukotan were not allowed to come out of their homes, and it is said that being too frail to save themselves, most of them were left behind and were captured by the Japanese to be their comfort women. a former binukot who was a witness of how they were abandoned during the World War II and how much the world has changed since then, felt fitting for me to be the protagonist of my story. Juan Tamad reimagined. While he is not a mythological creature himself, he is still a known figure in our literature and have long wanted to create a story where Juan Tamad became an immortal who still lives among us in the 21st century. Kibaan. Amongst the different creatures in my story, the Kibaan was the least familiar to me, for it simply doesn't exist in our place. We have no stories or encounters about it, but reading about this creature was very interesting. They are good singers, and from there I was able to create another character, a Kibaan who lives and disguises himself as a human pop star. Capre. As a kid, one of the stories in our family that I like to listen to is the experience of my sister who allegedly saw this creature while she was on a vacation in Iloilo City. Tikbalang. Another character in my story is a beauty queen Tikbalang who represented our country in a global beauty contest. Growing up with the common saying that a Tikbalang is getting married if it's raining on a clear sunny day, it was challenging to think of how I can write these characters in a new way after being commonly portrayed as mischievous creatures that would often play pranks on people. In my story, where the Encantos have learned to disguise themselves among humans and have adapted to the modern time, it was also fun to think of what kind of life a Tikbalan can have in this setting. Olaira. In Antique, where the mountains meets the sea, the legend of Olaira, a Tamawa princess, is one of the stories in the Kinaraya literature and history that I'm very proud of. It was a radio drama written and broadcasted by Russell Tordesillas, and until now, Olaira is appreciated as a well-known mythological figure in our province. While I was brainstorming, I first thought of using Olira herself as a character, but in her story, she was already married happily and sailing across the sea, so it didn't feel right to mess up the ending. And that was how I created the character of Rima, a fictional daughter of Olira, a Tamawa princess who got enticed by the modern world and decided to stay in the land to learn witchcraft and live as a student instead of cruising with her parents in their golden ship. That's a lot of characters, as you can see, guys. So that's why I definitely recommend that you guys you get this book, okay? Because you'll be reading a lot about characters who have evolved. So that's mythological creatures who have evolved. These are the modern takes of these writers. Okay, so thank you for this wonderful presentation to us, Erica Batas from Antique. Okay, so thank you, Erica. Once again, you guys, you can get you can read her book or her story on the Kadiliman. Okay, so that is Untold Endings. The next one that we're going to have is by Charisse Sumalinog. Okay, this is for her book, for her story entitled Simula. Okay, so her story can be found on Liwanag. Okay, let me just load that for you. Okay, so Simula by Charisse Sumalino. Okay, so let me just, okay, here you go. So, okay, once again, hi, my name is Charisse P. Sumalinog. I'm the writer of the story Simula, one of the entries of the Mitolohiya anthology. It has always been my passion to write. However, my stories are either written in crumpled papers, thrown underneath my bed, scribbled in tan page notebooks. Okay, Simula is my debut story, which, as if bought by divine intervention, has found its way to be submitted. As a writer, I always have a certain fascination in anything grotesque, uncanny, and macabre. I love reading sci fi and speculative fiction, which greatly influence my genre and style. Writing is my saving grace. My greatest weapon, a pen. A pen that continually bleeds stories that I want to tell. Hence, written on my story are my private confrontations of my inner demons, of how I battle pain, how I face my fears, and how I unravel the threads of her twisted sanity. The story is entitled Simula. The magic of the title lies on the idea that it is a pun, a wordplay which provides two interpretations. Perhaps you have read this word as si mula, which means beginning in Filipino. Yeah, quite. This is a good try, my dear friends, because obviously the story is about a certain ritual in an unknown town where boys at a certain age are going to be tested. The coming of age, the beginning. However, here's the catch. The word provides a sense of ambiguity, as this may also be pronounced as simula. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is in short for simulation. Okay, simula. I know you read it back. The imitation of reality. As a speculative fiction mixed with ancient folklore, I want to break the fourth wall and teleport you in the world of my imagination. I want to deceive you. And from my title alone, I think I already got you there. The creature. From among the creatures in the lower mythology, I choose the Mandurgo, to which my story will primarily gravitate. Mandurugo is a bloodsucker belonging to the vampire category who were depicted as a young and beautiful woman by day, but develop wings and long, sharp tongues by night, which they used to prick the inside of a man's mouth while kissing him passionately to obtain blood. Through these characteristics, I want to explore the female sexuality, depicting a traditional female archetype known as femme fatale or dangerous woman. I want to pose the question: does woman seduce or men succumb? Lastly, through the depiction of this creature, I want to recreate the conventional portrayal of women in fairy tales who, some, if not all, sleeps while waiting to be kissed by a man. In my story, women kissed and men wakes no more. Oh, how do you love that? Okay, let me just repeat that because it's worth mentioning again. Okay, this is very important. I want to recreate the conventional portrayal of women in fairy tales who, some, if not all, sleeps while waiting to be kissed by a man. In my story, women kiss and men wakes no more. Isn't that amazing? I'd say, wow, that's amazing. If when we read the manuscripts, we knew or we would know like if there's something really different if you really use your imagination when you came up with a story because we don't just look at the surface. Okay, we look deeper. So we're so happy we got this story for this collection. Okay, so who's next on our list? Okay, so after Simula by Charisse Sumalinog, we'll have Chloe Monsanto for her story Pasado Olvidado. Okay, so you can find or you can read her story in the Kadiliman book. Once again, this is Pasado Olvidado by Chloe Monsanto. Okay, let me share with you her video. Okay, so I hope you guys are enjoying this alternate or from slides to videos. Okay, okay. Chloe, here you go. Take it away, Chloe.
So yes, finally, this is the third video. Hello, guys. Let me introduce myself to you first. I am Chloe Monsanto, and here is Chloe. Yes, we're both Chloe. But to my friends, I actually go by the name as CM3 or Rosas Pandan. So, with regards to career, I am actually a freelance artist. So, I do murals with my equally talented friends.
Hi, my name is.
I also do a portrait commission. And even before the pandemic, I was actually an art teacher to kids. So I teach them basic drawings, watercolors, anything they want to learn about art. So me as a writer, I do write in my free time. So it is a hobby of mine ever since I was a kid. And painting and writing for me goes hand in hand. When I do an artwork, I usually do a rough sketch of my character. And secondly, I will actually write a story behind the character I'm about to paint. So yeah, that's how artistic I am. And I clearly look at my flowers. So when it comes to credibility, I did write some uh, poems for spoken for poetry for a cultural performances. So when it comes to official printed books, Kadiliman at Liwanag is actually my first story that was formally published. So the title of my story in Kadiliman at Liwanag book is Pasado Olvidado. Pasado Olvidado is a Spanish word for forgotten past. In Bisaya, we call Pasado Olvidado as nalintang kagahapon. So why is it I use Spanish words instead of English translation or Filipino? Well, why not? No, actually, I use the Spanish words because I wanna give the readers a glimpse of my story, where and when it sets. You already know it's in the colonial era. So, with regards to the summary of my story, let's just say there's a girl who lives in, I think it's a 17th century Cebu, and she forgot that she had a past life in the pre-colonial times. Also, in my story, there is an encanto. Why is that? I mean, I just love to have encanto there in my story. We don't talk about Bruno, no, no, no. No, that's not the encanto we meant. I meant to say that encanto here in the Philippines, it is actually a spirit or a magical being that resides in forest or any big trees like acacia or what is it other trees growing? Yes, like balete. We have these famous stories about balete, like the white lady. Encanto nowadays is a very general term. Like when we say duende, some would say, yeah, that's an encanto. But there is actually a deeper structure to it, category, why it is somewhat different from those others. Based also on my research, Encanto was used to describe as someone who is not like us. Hence why we here in Cebu, we call Encanto as mga dili ingon ato or unlike us. Here in Visayas, we actually describe them as somewhat mestizo, not your typical Afro. Yeah, it has blue eyes, fair skin, fair hair, really much of a foreigner. So that maybe that's where we got our term mga dili ingon ato or Encanto, unlike us. Also, the reason why I chose Encanto rather than using other Philippine mythical creatures in my story because I was fascinated with my Lola's tales. In the south side Cebu, uh, she said that Encantos were very rampant. The stories that centers on these mythical creatures is very well known there in the provinces. Like, yeah, she said that that as little kids, they parents would use to scold them every night whenever they went home late. They would say, "Panguli na mo, ikwaon niyo mo sa Encanto." She also told me a story about her auntie who was educated by Spanish friars. She said that these friars would have their catechism and they would incorporate pre-colonial uh, myths through the religious, stories. Like the 40 days, I think 40 or 30 days war in heaven, and those fallen angels that were thrown here on the earth were actually the Encantos or descendants of those things. We also have the Book of Enoch that states about the Watchers who fell in love with women. They were punished by God and thrown here on earth. Maybe that's also a little connection about the Encanto that I'm fascinated about. It's still a theory. I haven't researched on that thing. But the aspect of the Watchers falling in love with women, it also happened in the Encanto lores. Like some Encantos were married to women, like they had children, those children, and it was also said that if you married an Encanto, you will have a very good luck. Where that came from, but I heard it from hearsays from my mama. That is a little bit about me and my story, and I hope to see you guys. And thank you. Have a nice day.
I so love the funny take in this video, Chloe. I just realized that you're from Cebu. I'm in Cebu. We can meet up maybe next time, right? Like why not? So yeah, so that is Chloe Monsanto for her story Pasado Olvidado. I really want to rewatch this video over and over again. I would say this video is well professionally made, very well thought. Yeah, so thank you so much for the effort. Okay, and we just realized that we'll have this different type of book launch. So we'll put in, or we'll be able to put in the spotlight, especially for anthologies with many writers. Like we have 20 writers in this series, so we cannot just have them all over and give them the justice. So this is the reason why we decided to create, or like we asked them to give us the videos or the graphics, and then we'll put them to life. All right. Okay. So thank you once again. You can read Chloe's story, Pasado Olvidado, in Kadiliman. You know what? When I was reading Pasado Olvidado, I was like, what is this title? Well, I didn't really think about Google translating it, but thank you so much for the explanation. That's really very interesting. Okay, so you guys should check out the book. Again, if you haven't ordered the copy yet, you can find on the caption, the link to the Google form. So it's kind of easy. Okay, so the next one is by Ara Marie Bayhon, Ang Babae sa Kwadro. So this is going to be short. Okay, so I'm going to read the words from the author herself. Okay, so Ang Babae sa Kwadro. Si Ara Marie Bayhon o mas kilala sa kanyang pseudonym na Abahara ay kasalukuyang nasa ika-4 na taon sa kolehiyo na kumukuha ng kursong AB Political Science sa University of Makati. Karamihan sa mga akda niyang nailimbag ay maiikling kwento mula sa sinalihan niyang writing contest. Naging ganap siyang registered author noong Enero 2022 bilang isang manunulat. Naniniwala siyang sumasailalim ang literatura sa panahon kung kailan ito isinulat. Gayon din ang kanyang mga akda na madalas ay tumatalakay sa usapin at isyong panlipunan. The title of the story, okay, so it's Ang Babae sa Kwadro, ay karaniwang kwentong bayan na nagpasalin-salin hanggang sa ganap na itong maging isang mitolohiya. Tungkol ito sa paglalakbay ni Raya na aksidenteng napunta sa panahon ng mga katutubo sa pamamagitan ng isang kwadro. Ito ang painting na pinangangalagaan ng konseho ng matanda sa kanilang bayan na hanggang ngayon ay nananatili pa ring misteryo sa kanila. Dito niya malalaman ang pinagmulan ng pangalan ng kanyang bayan, ang Silawan, maging ang lihim na bumabalot sa kanyang pagkatao. And Anna used the creature, ang ligaw o ang mga nilalang na may kakayahang maglakbay sa oras ay mula sa lahi ng mga babaylan na inatasan ni Bathala. Sila ang sinisigurado o sumisigurong umaayon ang mga pangyayari ayon sa hinihingi ng panahon at pagkakataon. Ang hirap talaga magpalit-palit ng channel, from English, Filipino to Bisaya. But yeah, there you have it from Ara Marie Baihon. So, ang babae sa kwadro, which you can find in the collection Kadiliman. Okay? Kadiliman, ang babae sa kwadro by Ara Marie Baihon. Okay, so the next one, okay, so Suki na siya. She's a regular writer, or I would say she would win. She actually won several or a few of our writing contests in the past, and we also love her story. So I'd like to present to you. Okay, drum roll, everyone, please. Come on, effort. Okay, this is Pauline Navarro for her story, Therapy Session Long Overdue. Therapy Session Long Overdue can be found on Liwanag. Okay, so once again, guys, this is Pauline Navarro.
I am Pauline Navarro, also known as @PaulinePiggy, and Pauline Piggy creates in my socials. On the weekdays, I am a teacher, specifically a senior high school teacher. But on the weekends, I try to create as much as possible. I write short stories, I write poems, I write in my blog sometimes. I also try to create YouTube videos and even compose and sing songs. But at the root of all those creative endeavors, my mission as a writer is just the same, to be a storyteller in various platforms. I hope to tell stories and create stories so that other people will be inspired to voice out their own.
Today I'm here to tell you about a very special project that I am honored to be a part of. My short story has been included in 8 Letters Books Mitolohiya PH under the title Liwanag, Mga Bagong Alamat. For this anthology, writers were asked to create stories including lower mythology creatures following the theme evolution. The lower mythology creature I selected was Bakunawa. According to Google Arts and Culture, the Bakunawa is a serpent-like dragon in Philippine mythology, usually depicted with a characteristic looped tail and a single horn on the nose. It is also commonly known as the destroyer of moons or the moon eater. Personally, I've always been fascinated with the numerous versions of Bakunawa's legends, so I was inspired to make my own. My short story in this collection is entitled Therapy Session Long Overdue. To give you a glimpse of it, here's the blurb. Even before it began, there were already 3 things wrong with Baku's therapy session. 1. He was going against his will. 2. His therapist was a klutz. And 3. There was nothing wrong with him that needed fixing. Unbeknownst to him, a millennia's worth of trauma and history cannot be so easily hidden just because he claims they don't exist. During his unorthodox session, he unearths a past pain, an old identity, and all the reasons why he needs to heal. Please support this anthology and enjoy the rest of 8 Letters Literary Festival. Let's keep Philippine literature alive and thriving.
Okay, thank you so much, Pauline. And as you can see, or if you watch, she actually wrote about the Bakunawa. So we knew that this character has been so overused, okay? And we received a lot of Bakunawa stories. And of course, the next thing we had to do was to choose who applied the theme, which was again evolution. So we wanted something different, okay, a different take on Bakunawa. And Pauline did it well in her story. Okay, in her story. Like, can you imagine? This is the title: Therapy Session, Long Overdue. Like, can you imagine? Okay, that is a story of Bakunawa who's actually talking to someone with her about his anger management issues. I hope I got it right, but yeah, that's really an interesting story. So again, that is Therapy Session, Long Overdue by Pauline Navarro, which you can find on Liwanag. Okay, so the next one is also an interesting story. Okay, so we'll be featuring Dear Old Self by May. Okay, so again, I'll be showing you guys slides. Okay, slides, but I'll be reading the words from the author herself. Okay, so Dear Old Self. So, what is it about? Hi, my name is May, and I'm the author of Dear Old Self. I'm a reader and most of the time a daydreamer, and by daydreaming is how I create stories. Ideas come to me in a form of scenes or sentences of a character, whether they are the protagonist, the side character, the villain, or even the spectator. And by letting myself just delve into that idea, I create a story. I sometimes write it down, but most of the time it just stays in my head. The first book that I wrote was about a space pirate. It was a story that was co written with my older cousin who submitted it as his high school project. After that, I tried to write on my own, but I was preoccupied on focusing on my studies, so I instead chose to write the ideas down for future references. Dear Old Self is about a diary of a young mangkukulam named Persephone. She lives with her ate Astoria and their abuela near the foot of Banahaw, a mountain near where I live. They were able to make a living by making potions and selling it to other mythical creatures. They are the last of their kind because their kind was massacred way, way back. As mentioned in Percy's entries, they are the kind of mangkukulam who are gifted with special blessings. They have the same abilities of the usual mangkukulam, but their blessings make them more powerful. Astoria has the blessing to see the future by reading the stars, and she can also summon a star's memory. Abuela has the blessing of the dark. She can manipulate and travel through darkness. She also used to be able to make pocket dimensions where she can enter at will, and while she is in it, time would be irrelevant in that dimension. Percy has the blessing of plants. She can manipulate and create any form of plant she wants. She actually has created a lot of spells involving plants when she received her blessing. However, if a plant that she wants to create already exists, she has to follow that creator's way to recreate that plant. The creatures that are featured in the entries are ebuas and sirenas. Ebuas are a type of aswang that eats corpse. They usually hang in funeral homes to rob the deceased and replace it with a banana trunk. But unfortunately, they are afraid of lights. The idea, the ebuas interacting with them, was my way of showing Abuela's ability. I was choosing between the Alan and Ebua, but the idea gravitates more on Percy being creeped out in a graveyard. The next creature was the Sirena. Sirenas has always fascinated me as a kid, hence why I included them. The entries also mentioned the duendes. The idea came from my mom who used to tell that whenever I was badly sick as a kid, I would hallucinate. There are tiny people. Creepy, but I still believe her. Writing this story was challenging since I have a lot of ideas for it. A lot of story ideas that was not related to the final draft. At one point, Percy was supposed to be an Alan turned human like those Tikbalang stories that I used to enjoy. The draft itself was supposed to be an epistolary, but I remembered writing letters as a kid was a drag, so I decided to write it as a diary. A diary was much more personal, and as a kid, it would be easier to write one down. I hope more people would enjoy reading Percy's entries as much as I enjoy writing it. Stay curious and inspired. Okay, thank you so much for this word, May. And I would say this particular story, although I would say it's more targeted to younger audience, I would say it's also one of a kind in the collection of these stories. It is also something different. So, you guys, last but not the least, I'll be showing you another video. This one is by Kiera Vires. Kiera Vires for her story, The Debate at Yakal Library. Okay, you can find her story in Liwanag. So once again, this is Kiera Vires for her story, The Debate at Yakal Library.
Happy Lit Fest, everyone! I am Kira Viris. To tell about my author journey, it started with my first love, reading and writing. And I have my dear parents, Ninangs and Ninongs, to thank for that, for gifting me with books that I've enjoyed reading since I was a kid. I could say that my proficiency in writing was shaped by school, by quality education. I've enjoyed writing since high school and took up creative writing as a specialized subject in third year high school. I had a knack for writing prose, especially short stories. I took up Bachelor of Secondary Education major in math as a scholar of De La Salle University and pursued my dream of being a teacher. Whenever possible, I find time to write. I've begun sharing my writing online through Wattpad and fanfiction.net, starting with fan fiction. Later on, I poured out my feelings, such as feelings of heartbreak in my writing, and also all about nature, this time in poetry, especially free verse poems and haiku, and shared them through Instagram, as it is termed Insta writing, and then Facebook. At the start of my author journey, I tried submitting my stories and poems to contests, but they did not win. Then, I attended several creative writing events and workshops from different groups and publishers. These workshops shifted to online during the pandemic. 2020 gave me more time to write, and it was the first year that I got published. The first work that I published was a nonfiction essay in an ebook anthology about life during the pandemic. Then, in 2020, I also got published in ebook and print for the first time, when my short story won in a contest for a fantasy anthology, this time for fiction. Last year, I wrote my first short novel about longtime best friends who were also teachers and how they fell in love during the pandemic, thanks to a birthmark. The short novel got published this year. My first poetry collection also got published in an anthology this February. I thank God for all of that and for all that I've gone through. I also want to thank my teachers and mentors for all that I have learned during my author journey. You have made me a better writer, so I'm able to reach my dreams. And I also thank everyone who supported me in this dream. Hopefully, sharing my author journey will also inspire my fellow writers and authors. Liwanag is the fifth book that I'm published in, and I'd like to thank 8 Letters for this great opportunity to be part of the Mitolohiya PH anthology series. I'm excited to read the stories in Liwanag of my co-authors, as I have been excited to read the first book, Takip Siling. The title of my short story in our anthology Liwanag is The Debate at Yakal Library. Ayan, uso debate ngayon, di ba? Kidding aside, as for the mythological creatures present in my story, I'd first like to ask you, do you believe in elves? How about vampires? For Mitolohiya PH3, the call for submissions of stories was about Philippine lower mythology. And that was interesting because mythologies usually focus on pantheons of gods and goddesses, of deities. But how about the lower mythology? Okay, for example, creatures that are not deities. So elves and vampires are included in that. I'm also a fan of Tolkien, so as for the elves, I didn't limit them to elves in just one place or country, in here or another. But I wanted to show in my story that the mythological creatures here are also connected to the creatures in other cultures' mythologies through portals all over the world. But still, the setting is here in the Philippines, as shown by the place Yakal Library, and the Yakal tree is endemic to the Philippines. Aside from lower mythology, the Mitolohiya PH3 contest call also had a theme of evolution. So for my short story, because of my background in math and in high school also in science, I included concepts of evolution as well as concepts in logic, arguing, proving, and mathematics, like the geometric series. For example, when you add up numbers in a geometric sequence, like 1, 2, 4, 8, and so on, shown when population increases exponentially. And then, I've combined mythology and biological evolution. For my protagonist, Andrew Adamson, he is an undergraduate biology student who does not believe in things outside of logic and science, such as elves and vampires. As he was researching at Yakal Library, he meets a strange woman who challenges what he knows. So, will Andrew win the argument? Or do you think the woman will win the argument? Or will anyone win the argument at all? And how will they prove each other's points? Find out by reading The Debate at Yakal Library from 8 Letters Mitolohiya PH Anthology, Liwanag.
Okay, so yan na nga bang sinasabi ko eh, no? Saan kayo makakahanap ng mythical creatures na nagde-debate? So that's what I'm talking about when we talk about evolution, how would you apply the theme evolution onto your, onto your legends on these or in these short stories? So I would definitely recommend getting these two books because each story really stands out. Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much, Kiara Veris, for that. The debate at Yaka Library. When I read the title palang ulam na. Oh yeah. The debate. Yeah. That I was about to say na it's probably based on what's happening right now. Ang daming debate, uso ang debate, and I'm sure iba yung take ni Kiara dito. So yes, please go ahead, you guys, get the book, Liwanag. Okay, so we've heard from the authors themselves. I hope you guys enjoy the book Fiesta and stay tuned for the last day of the Lit Fest, which is tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll be featuring poetry books entitled Horizons Creed, Things I Told the Moon and Stars, Magic of the Modest, Suong, Epiphanies, and Formalities. We'll hear from the authors themselves live. So that's 5 books altogether. Like I think it's from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. And another news, we'll be sending the freebies later today. So if you registered on our event, make sure to check out your email. Check the spam, check your inbox. And yeah, that's all from me today. Thank you very much for supporting the 8 Letters Literary Festival. I believe this is the 4th time that we're doing this. And once again, this is your curator, Cindy Wong. See you again next time. Bye, you guys.